Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock or 4:01 on Monday, March 21st, 2022, and today we're having our annual goal-setting meeting. And if you don't mind, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Wan?
Here.
Councilmember Wolf?
Here.
Vice Mayor Tillman?
Here.
Mayor Cloven?
I am here as well. And we'll be done with item number 2. No, actually, we'll go to item number 2, which are roll call, our protocol video. And since Janet's not here, we'll ask you, Dana, is to roll the video, please. No.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the AB 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is also being webcast on the City of Clayton's website. The Mayor will call upon its council, presenters, staff, and other speakers by name and ask that they speak clearly and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via webcast and Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. Telephone attendees will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their name, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received by the Clayton City Clerk by 5 p.m. today will be entered into the record but will not be read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. The chat feature is not active. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date.
Thank you, Dana. Much appreciated. If you haven't noticed already, for those in the public who are watching, we are meeting for the first time in person as a council since I've been elected on the council. It's been a long time since I've sat here, since the Planning Commission days. So we are trying today our first in-person council meeting, getting prepared for the time when you can come back and join us in person. For the past 2 years, we've had Councilmember Diaz doing the Pledge of Allegiance from his home. Thank you, Jim. You did a great job. But for right now, we can all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, item number 3 is closed, and we'll go to item number 4, which is public comment on non-agenda items. Again, we're going to be getting used to a new system where you are going to be able to raise your hand here, and we will have our clerk call on you so you can speak. As always, I request that you have your comments be respectful and that you address the council as a whole, not individually. We're all trying to do the best we can, and we are working as one body to do the best we can for the city of Clayton. With that, Dana, do we have any hands? That's pretty good.
Okay. Yes. Bumpy roads. Okay. Mayor Cloven, yes, we do have one hand raised. James, I will promote you to panelist momentarily. When prompted, please unmute your microphone. When invited by the mayor, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
James, you're live. Welcome.
Oh, great then. Thank you and good day to everyone. I'm here to talk about the parcel tax, but with a little different spin to it. Raising parcel taxes to give employee raises will impact the city's long-term finances as this correlates in an exponential increase to the city's pension expenses and unfunded pension liability. I recommend the city perform and publicly disclose a pension expense sensitivity analysis factoring in different rates of investment returns, salary increases, cost of living adjustments to retirees, and a shock scenario where CalPERS has no investment returns for a period of 3 to 5 years. Based on a possible scenario, the city's unfunded pension liability could exceed $15 million for current and future retirees. So the question is, why is it so large? Well, the reason is a $70,000 annual pension for someone retiring around the age of 58 years of age with a 2% annual inflation factor costs approximately, and this is shocking, about $2 million. So if you went into the open market, you have to pay $2 million at the age of 58 to get a guaranteed pension for life for $70,000. So in the future, small cities will be unable to incur significant pension expense contributions when they become due. At some point, they will become due. So what you're paying right now, it's not the true expense. As part of your parcel tax diligence, I recommend 2 things. First, ask CalPERS for a final bill on your pension expense if you were to opt out of CalPERS. Keep in mind, you're not contractually liable for this unfunded expense, but you won't be able to extend CalPERS pension to employees in the future. 2, consider immediately opting out of the CalPERS and switching to a 401k plan with perhaps a 8% employee match. Finally, I appreciate the great efforts the city has taken to optimize their city work services. And also, I know from talking to some folks there at the city that you're going to start documenting your work processes, which let me tell you, that's extremely important because it does 2 things. 1, it allows the successor to come in and to efficiently do their job. And second of all, from an optimization perspective, it allows you to shake out low value work that can be eliminated. So again, I want to thank the council for their time. You're working really hard, and I want this to be seen as constructive, but you do have to factor in that dirty word called unfunded, let me say 3 dirty words, unfunded pension liability. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, James. Dana, are there any other hands?
Mayor Cloven, there are no other hands raised.
Excellent, thank you. And with that, item number 4, public comment is closed. And we'll move on to action items and item number 5. And we'll start off with item number 5A, which is review and discuss and define the City Council goals for fiscal year 2022-2023. And we'll start off with item A. So, Raina, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is very exciting. It's also my first in-person meeting with this council since I started about 15 months ago. So I'm really pleased that we're going to be able to move into that arena. I want to do a couple of things for this item to set it up for the council's discussion. The first will be a review of the FY 21-22 City Council priority areas and an update on the status for what has been achieved in those areas, and then just kind of kicking off the conversation about FY 23 goals in terms of how we move forward. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so hopefully we can get that switched on to the big screen and you'll be able to see it. That'll be very exciting. If not, it's in your packet, so you'll be able to see that. Oh, see, and all right, here's the thing to learn about which view. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, couldn't figure out which one is going to show up versus what I see. So Terrific. So the council had 5 priority areas from the goal-setting session last year. The first was land use and housing, and there were a few items that were identified there. One is the housing element, which is required, which is on track for meeting our mandated guideline to turn it into HCD by January of 2023. The second is an ADU ordinance, really getting our ordinance in line with state law, but also doing some other things to help facilitate ADU development where it makes sense. The work has begun on that in the first quarter of this year. And then the general plan safety and circulation elements, now that the city has completed its local hazard mitigation plan, that was done late last year, then we will need to look forward to general plan safety and circulation element updates. So that's still ahead of us and will be a relatively expensive endeavor when we get there. Under public safety, updating the local hazard mitigation plan, that's complete. Updating our emergency operations plan, it's something we still need to do. We have not had funding for that, and we need to determine where that fits on the citywide priority. We have an old emergency operations plan, and we certainly know that we could limp our way through it, but I would say that we're not as well prepared as we could be. The third thing was implementing NIXL, which is a communication protocol using texting, essentially, and calls. That was implemented in December 2021. Residents can sign up on the city's website and receive those alerts. So it's a great way for us to get information of a safety nature blasted out. And then improving pedestrian traffic safety is really an ongoing issue. We did get those advanced warning signal ahead signs in approaching the middle school, which was a long time coming, but we got that done. And we'll continue to look for other opportunities. Oh, that's weird. That was fun. Okay. We'll continue to look for opportunities to do that. Financial sustainability, developing a long-term plan, and having revenue options that was presented to the council in February of 2022. You do have these in your packet. So I'm going to keep talking. So that went forward. The second was adopt a financial reserve policy, and a draft of that was completed before our new finance director came on board, and we had essentially put that on pause as she came on board, and so we're still pending completion on that and bringing it back to the Budget and Audit Committee. And then improving CIP information and planning to address that with the upcoming capital budget, and the investment that the council approved at the last meeting in the ClearGov budget software platform will really allow us to do more from a project standpoint, as will having a new city engineer on board. I had a meeting with Larry Thies, our new city engineer, this morning, and we were talking about the CIP program, and he and the deputy city engineer, Jason Chen, have already been talking about kind of how to maybe structure some of their thinking about the CIP and looking at projects as we go forward and setting ourselves up in the future. So I feel very positive about that compared to where we have been. Quality of life. The first one was just related to an event that already took place. The second was consider a community survey. We've done no specific or no general survey. We have done specific survey components related to the housing element and to ARPA funding. We are also going to be having survey research done for the potential tax measure. So we've done pieces of that, and we are essentially making some progress on that. Reviewing the cannabis ordinance, the council considered and ultimately was fully adopted through Planning Commission and Council in December of last year to allow outdoor cultivation up to the limits that are allowed under Prop 64 for personal use. And then finally, good governance. Installed technology to provide closed captioning for council meetings. We are working on getting that completed. Pleasant Hill, I believe, is in the process of putting in place something, so we're looking to hopefully piggyback on that process. A couple of the other bigger cities also have closed captioning already done. Updated purchasing policy was done in January of 2022. Updating the employee handbook. We are using a system that was originally developed on the police side for managing police policies called Lexipol. They do have a general government, local government function now. And so for the first time since 1993, we are updating our employee policies and are going to be able to start pushing those out to our employees in the next month or so. One of the huge advantages to that is that it has a training component and an automated acknowledgement and for employees when updates are provided or on an annual basis as needed. So a really good way for us to start to manage that process better in a way that we really haven't been able to do. And right now I think we have employee policies in 5 different documents and locations, so this is substantially more efficient. Update city IT infrastructure, including continued digitizing of records. So we've made some small inroads on that. We still need to identify funding and continue to move on that. I have advocated in the past, it hasn't come up recently, for a small city manager contingency for unforeseen events. No change has been made on that. And improving employee recruitment and retention. So we did have a new MOU for police effective July 1st, 2021. And that did address some compensation issues. Our miscellaneous employees' compensation under the current terms and conditions of employment does come up in June of this year. So that is something that we will need to address in the budget. And I guess this is as good a point as any to acknowledge that our police chief has accepted a conditional job offer for a position in another city, and that is, of course, pending background. So we expect that to be successful, unfortunately. And so this issue of employee retention and salaries, et cetera, is really it's quite pointed, and it will continue to be a challenge for this city. We certainly don't need to be at the top of the county, but we are so far below the bottom of the county that we are really struggling with continued retention. So I just want to point out that if we needed a good example of it, that example came to me this morning. So I'm very sad to hear it, but that is the way it goes. So I'm going to stop there. I can answer any questions before we start into the FY 22-23 goals, if there are any questions from the council. Plus, staff, as you can see, is here as well if there are specific programmatic questions.
At this point in time, it's time to move.
Well, we're going to miss you.
I will miss Clayton. I will. It's been a hard decision for me.
If there,
I may, how do I turn this thing on?
Push the green button.
Hello, testing. If I may add, the Chief Warren has really brought, for those of you who haven't been around a long time, we've been through a successive number of chiefs of police, and I will say that in the short time that she's been here, she has brought a degree of professionalism in my view, that did not exist prior to her arrival. Record keeping, job development for the officers and so forth, giving them the opportunity to show their strengths in the administrative function, bringing the equipment that we have and now enjoy and use. In fact, one of the things, and this has been one of my things, is the fleet is now completely upgraded to the Ford Explorer SUV police specials. Those kinds of things people may not realize, but they're extremely important. That way that we have a uniform set of vehicles. That's just one minor thing. But just the structure of the department has been moved forward very, very aggressively and professionally. And I've conveyed this to her. It's one of the things that people don't realize, that there's a state organization that oversees and sanctions police departments. And we've been lucky. We've not had, before Elise came, somebody from that entity come in here and audit our police department. We may not have passed the test, but with her degree of experience and professionalism, I think we could stand head above any of the other departments in this part of the region and probably statewide. So she moved the ball forward, and whoever comes in after her is going to enjoy a lot of things that were put in place by Chief Warren that now put us really ahead of the game. So thank you.
Okay. So I will, I'm going to move on to the 2023 City Council goals. I have a brief presentation, and then I'm going to recommend that we take public comment on item 5A, subparts A and B, and then bring it back to the council for discussion, potentially, of those future goals, if that works for the council. So I am going to once again... Dun, da, da, da. Great, perfect. There are a few slides that aren't in your packet because I didn't have all the information until after the agenda was posted, so these will be added to the city's website, as well as the public comment that you all received that was added to the website today. I had put out a very brief survey to the city council members prior to the meeting, just to get a few preliminary thoughts and some early thinking on it. So thank you for those of you who completed it. You can see here sort of the top priorities that came up. I would say there's one that came up across everybody who participated, which was the tax measure and moving forward with messaging on that. The second that came up more frequently was the housing element, and really the need to continue engagement and move through a process to have a compliant housing element. And then there were kind of a variety of other things that had some recognition as potential council goals for or priorities for the upcoming year, including ARPA funding, staffing of City Hall, some TLC and landscape maintenance district work, et cetera. So that was just some initial feedback from the council to kind of spark the conversation. I did also ask a question about city vision as we look at what our goals are. The city's vision has been in place for a while now and really hasn't had a lot of discussion. So the city vision, oh gosh, I don't have it written in front of me, but there were some comments potentially to look at leaning into the organizational aspects around employees enjoying their work. And also just really that, if we're going to use this vision statement, we need to continue to really make sure that people know what it is. And if it's not going to be used, then we need to, communicate that as well. That's it. So with that, that is the... your packet also has, I didn't have it in the PowerPoint, a picture of an iceberg, and that's just a reminder that when we do kind of goal setting, it's really those things that are above the waterline that show up in a goal setting session, and they are those high priority items, but it is by far not the majority of the work of the organization. All the day-to-day work takes place below the surface and is really critical, significant, and can't just be taken for granted because it does take a lot of effort to do all of those things. And so just a reminder as we continue to look at goal setting in the future that we want to balance the ability of the organization to continue its day-to-day activities with the council goals that we set as the high priority moving forward. And additionally, I think it's, important not to have too many goals. We tend to get fractured and unfocused when we have too many things on the plate. And so I would encourage the discussion to help focus the organization. We as staff really appreciate kind of clear, high-level goals, so there aren't a zillion of them because we cannot do a zillion things all at once. So that completes my feedback. And with that, if we wanted to open it to public comment, and then we're ready to take notes on brainstorming after that.
Excellent. If you have a comment on what was just stated in items 5A and B, as presented by our city manager, now is your time to raise the hand, and we will be called on. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Dana, do we have any hands?
Mayor Cloven, we do not have any hands raised on this item.
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate it. And with that, we will close public comment and bring it back to discussion to the council. And here we are. It seemed pretty obvious that the top item of discussion on the list from the respondees was related to the tax measure. So the question is, what type of goals can we set as council relative to the tax measure? Personally, as I understand it from previous meetings, that we were in agreement that a tax measure is important to consider. I appreciate Councilmember Wan's opening the can of worms back in July. He did a great job doing so on Nextdoor and on his blogs. It was a great way to introduce our citizens to what our need was. It was further enunciated by the 10-year forecast, which we received in February. And as we look at some of the recent challenges which we've seen in regard to staffing, turnover, and what has most recently happened with our police chief, who has received a better compensated position someplace else, we have challenges.
Mayor, do we want to perhaps...
I'm
Laura?
sorry. Well, she stated that she had better opportunities and
No, Laura and Jim. That's...
So I'd just like to open up, what kind of goals can we set along those lines? And that's I think it's an appropriate way to start. Open for discussion. Yes, Councilmember.
Okay, so when we talk about the tax measure, there's been a lot of misinformation with regard to the public and the actual figure that we're talking about. I think we have to get with our consultants to figure out where we're going to be on that and what type of tax measure there should be, although this is very important. My question would be how the new rules on the ARPA funding, I guess this is more to our city manager, how the new rules regarding the ARPA funding fit into this whole ball of wax right now.
Thank you for that question. I think really the biggest point on this would be that the ARPA funding, wonderful though it is one-time funding in nature. And the budget challenge that we face is ongoing and structural in nature. And so the ARPA funds may allow us to do either some things that we couldn't otherwise afford to do, or may help us have a soft landing across years where we may not yet have sufficient revenue. But ultimately, those ARPA funds are only one time in nature and really only buy us some amount of time, depending on what the spending decisions are, and they are not a long-term solution to the problem.
And the same goes then for our reserves, right?
Correct.
Not fiscally responsible use of money. So I certainly am in favor of having one of our top goals be the tax measure for sure. But when are we expected to get some results from the consultants?
So the consultant was hoping to start on the survey research this week. The goal is to have a presentation to the council on the survey results from the consultant no later than May 17th. So essentially a month before we need to make that decision. We will try to get it earlier, but the latest date would be May 17th, just kind of looking at it'll take 2 weeks to do the research, a couple of weeks to do the analysis, and then we'll work on finalizing that. So maybe the May 3rd meeting, maybe a special meeting, but no later than the meeting of May 17th.
Can you clarify what type of information we're going to be getting from the consultant? And the reason I ask is there's a lot of questions about that. It's, as I understand it, we're going to get an answer whether it's should we do this or not. Is it an absolute no-go, or is it an absolute yes possibility, or something in between, and as well as what types of funding might be possible. So can you give a little more clarification what we're expecting from that? It's not just a yes-no. It's a lot more than that. So thank you.
It is a lot more than that. So we will get information on a little bit on community satisfaction, resident satisfaction. So there are a couple questions on that. There are a couple questions on sort of core values, how important are certain types of services to the community. We will be testing 3 potential types of tax measures that could be used: some sort of parcel tax, some sort of utility user tax, and some sort of transactions and use tax or sales tax. For both the parcel tax and the sales tax, we'll be testing at least 2, if not 3 levels of charge or fee or tax. So there's some assessment of willingness to pay across each of those. The UUT, we're doing just kind of a single number. That one we're not really testing so much the level as the actual mechanism. Typically those haven't fared very well in the last number of years. I wanted to test it anyway since there was some interest in it, but that will just test on a single number. Sales tax will test on 2 values, property tax on 3 values. So we'll get both relative willingness on those types of taxes, as well as the sort of a sense of how much might be too much, how much might be acceptable. We will then get, I'm trying to picture the survey questions. Those are the key areas of the survey questions, and then based on the analysis of that, we will get what SRI calls a go, no-go recommendation. So as you said, that's in either, yep, looks good based on our algorithm and all of the work they've done and the survey research in the community. We think that you have a good shot at getting this passed, you should go, and which of those that it might be. The no-go is, yeah, no, that's just not going to happen, not at any level, not at anything. And the middle ground is there seems to be some interest on your part of your community for or a willingness to consider taxes, but maybe they don't feel they have enough information yet, or that, you know, it's what SRI refers to as the go but not now. So we will get a recommendation that is one of those three options based on the analysis of the survey questions that I just generally have run through.
So I understand it's basically specifically related to tax and tax vehicles that might be appropriate, correct, for the most part? It's not really a survey of emotion or feelings about what's important in values or anything like that. It's specifically regarding vehicle and amounts. Is that correct?
There are a couple of questions at the beginning on general satisfaction with quality of life in the community, and then there are a few values type questions about different types of services. So we will get some information on that, not as much as, I mean, we could have expanded that area, but we were limited in terms of trying to keep the survey to a certain number of minutes in order to meet the financial constraints of the agreement. So we're not getting as much in that realm as we might, but we are getting some, we will get some of that values information, some community sentiment, so that we have that to help inform the decisions as well.
Thank you. I just know that I've had a couple conversations with former council members who have gone through this process, including some former mayors, and they've weighed in pretty heavily that they think that the results of this is going to be an absolute no, based on their personal experience of Clayton in the past. And I basically said, hey, if the consultant comes back to us and says, absolutely no, don't even try in November, then that's good advice to hear. I mean, it's good. It's good. Something good to consideration. So that's my comments right now. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got several questions. Can you remind me, anybody that's done scientific sampling, from my business that I came out of in the telecommunications, we had to use that because we used it for sizing the sizes of switching centers and so forth. What is the target universe sample size for this? How many people are going to be initially tempted to be contacted?
I'll have to look to remind myself. It's either, I think it's 200, it might be 300, but for a city our size, that gives us plus or minus about 5%, which is what we were going for. So we don't need as large a sample size in order to get that level of confidence in the statistics.
Well, and that's what I'm leading to is, assuming you get the full 5%, that will give you this picture. But as that percentage goes down, the confidence level also goes down. So I guess I'm assuming that these people understand that and will factor that into when they get their results and summarize them and bring them forward. Yes. That as that percentage goes down and you get less than 5%, the validity of the sample is going to decline as well.
They will absolutely take that into account, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one clarifying question, and you actually answered it the other night during our council meeting, but it's also been alluded that we don't have a balanced budget, which we know we do, and that we would have one going forward coming June. And so do you want to speak a little bit to that, just to kind of allay the fears that we're somehow upside down completely and don't know what we're doing here within City Hall, and that we don't have a balanced budget?
Thank you. I'd be happy to address that. So the city has always adopted a balanced budget, and I would never recommend that the council move forward on an annual basis and adopt anything other than a balanced budget. So there are a number of ways to deal with that. And when we show a projection that shows being upside down or with red ink, that is without any extraordinary efforts or proposed cuts or proposed use of one-time resources. So for example, not too long from now, I'll be presenting the council with a proposed budget for fiscal year 23. I will be proposing a balanced budget. There is no chance that I will come forward and not propose a balanced budget. Now, that is not to say that there won't be potential recommendations on reductions in some areas or potential use of one-time funds to stave off other types of reductions or other deeper reductions. But the budget will be balanced. It's the 10-year forecast that shows the red ink is if we do nothing on the natural, if we don't change any of our spending habits and we don't change our revenues, we will be in red ink. But we know we need to. So the question is, what does that look like? Does that look like one-time resources? Does that look like ongoing resources? Does that look like cuts? Does it look like some combination of those items? The challenge is that we have relatively, we don't have a very big budget to begin with, so there's not a lot of room for reductions. One-time revenues are fine to use as a stopgap measure, but as in the response to the question from Councilmember Wolf, that's not a long-term strategy. That's a Band-Aid. And, well, maybe we want to use a Band-Aid because we need to have a balanced budget and we don't want to decimate our funding or our staffing. But it's not a long-term strategy. But I can guarantee that I will present you a balanced budget for fiscal year 23 by some combination of mechanisms.
So this is a goal-setting situation, and there is, as I understand it, a commonality that we do want to talk about future funding and future revenues that could help our long-term challenges. The question is, are we going to choose to look at a revenue measure to put on the ballot in November or not? I don't know if we can answer that question until we get the answers back from our consultant. If he comes back and says absolutely no, we still have a choice as a city council to still put something on if that's something we desire, knowing that there's a lot of backlash and the possibility of it not passing. As Council Member Wan suggested a couple of meetings ago, he said, we have a need of a certain amount. We don't know what that amount is, but the lowest that amount is, we should put it on the ballot and say this is our need and put it out there. And that is a methodology. That is a way to go. Is the right way to go? I don't know. I've had a lot of conversations with residents since then, and the idea of a parcel tax is abhorrent to them because the person living in a 900 square foot condo versus the person living in a 10,000 square foot house would be paying the same amount. And people who are on the lower side of the income spectrum have challenges paying the same taxes, especially if they're on a fixed income. And I've talked about the challenges with our senior and fixed income folks that are out there. And so these are all things we need to discuss about what the future looks like relative to what we made put on November. My question for you as a council is, if we come together and find an amount in a vehicle that becomes appropriate and agreed upon, is that something that we can come up with a unified message and present as a unified group to our community? And that would be the goal that I would espouse to have, is to be together in what we present. Not knowing that there's a lot of discourse and a lot of challenging and different opinions on how to get there, but we in a civil manner can talk about how to get to whatever that is. Vice Mayor Tillman.
Yep, thank you. I agree with the premise. I do think that, yes, to answer your question, yes, I could be on board with doing that and being unified in a message. I think for me to be able to get there, though, I think we need to kind of articulate what it is we want to have in the budget that we're trying to pay for. I think we kind of have to work from that direction, right? So to Raina's point, she's going to bring us a balanced budget. What are we as a council willing to say we can live without because we know that the residents can? I think those are the decisions that we have to talk about and make. And so I don't know that we can do that in the next hour and 10 minutes, but I think that that's kind of the conversation that we need to have is, are we willing to cut a body, an FTE from City Hall? Is that palatable? And if we do that, we really do have to work with staff to figure out what is a low-hanging fruit that we can actually have them do without, right? So going through each department and figuring out what their daily tasks are, which ones are mundane, which ones do they think they can get rid of. I don't know if they have busy work that they're doing. Is that weekly report we get from them too much work? I'm throwing out examples here. What things can we cut off their plate so that they actually have the time to focus on the things that are important in their day-to-day tasks so that they can eliminate the others? That's one thing. So that we know, okay, that's actually, I'm not saying I want somebody to lose a job, but maybe that means that person actually works less hours during the week because it's not mandatory for them to work 40 hours. And then to answer her question about budgeting, excuse me, and coming up with a contract, or not a contract, but raises or et cetera in June, maybe somebody working 30 hours a week, doing the same work, getting the same pay, that's a raise. They're working less hours for the same pay. Things like that I think we have to talk about.
Well, we're losing a great advocate here now. When we talk about bringing our problems to the public and letting them understand what it is that we're actually needing, here we have our chief we're losing now, and a new chief is going to come in with a very limited experience about what it is that we actually need. If we talk about wanting to add another officer as opposed to letting one go, I would have loved to have the chief stand up at a meeting and lay it out for the public to understand exactly what it is that our police services do for us and how important it is that we expand, not to contract that. But I just your leaving is an example of where we are. I know that there's a lot of negative sentiment around a tax proposal, and it's a very difficult thing for a city council to want to step up and say, okay, well, we need something. And to Raina's point, the ARPA funding is not viable as far as the long term is concerned, and use of I've heard many people suggest the use of our reserves as another stopgap measure, and I think that's all we're going to get is if we don't find some figure that our citizens can live with, we are not going to have a city much longer. And I think that's important for people to understand, especially when we talk about services like our police. I've heard and seen a couple of the things that have come in with regard to outsourcing our police department and things like that. I would love to know what our citizens really feel about our police department and how important it is that we keep it within our city. So, again, I think the discussion has to be whether we are going to, and again, we won't know this until May, but we as a body, I think, need to settle on what we already have said, obviously, in your survey, that having some sort of tax measure as a goal for us is important.
And again, I concur that a tax measure seems logical. But if it's going, our polling comes back and says there's no way in heck it's going to pass, that changes the tone of what goes forward. That would be unfortunate, but we've got to listen to our citizens. In light of your comments, Chief, thank you for your honesty. In light of our staffing turnover in the past 3 years, we have some really deep conversations that we need to have about how we value our city staff and how we value what services we give to our citizens. This is a deeper, long-term conversation than we could even have this evening. But this is something that is, our city staff is the front door to our community, and as they go, so does our community. We've chosen as a city staff to honor them with funds from ARPA, and they were much appreciated. But I think for long-term satisfaction and for staff to stay and thrive professionally and have a culture of value, which is in our vision statement, these all need to be discussed. And if that is the case, and we're going to live by our visions, what are we as a city council going to do, and what are we going to tell our citizens to help reflect and magnify those values and those desires as a vision?
A couple questions. I'm very positive you'll be coming up with a balanced budget, which means another question. Are you still confident on the projections that were provided before? In other words, that in, I guess it was 22, 23, 24, that in fact we will be in the red and by a certain amount and accelerating as the years go out. Are you still confident in those projections?
If we make no changes to our ongoing revenue and no changes to our ongoing expenditures, yes, I'm very confident that we'll be in the red. The challenge will be that the proposal that will come in front of you will be with some reductions in the budget and probably some recommendation on the use of one-time revenues. So the underlying budget is still at a threat of being in the red, even if the budget proposed to the council doesn't show red when you get to the bottom number. So yeah, I'm very comfortable saying that we're going to, absent some conscious effort to change that equation, that those numbers are going to stick in generally that order of magnitude.
Yeah, because it sounds like one person, not a committee, subcommittee, or whatever, this body that's ultimately going to have to act on it, is not going to participate in those recommendations to bring the balanced budget along?
So typically, staff would put together the budget proposal to come forward to the council. For the last, many of the last several years, it's come to the Budget and Audit Committee and then to the full City Council, but that is something that staff puts together based on the results of these conversations as well as other council direction over the course of the year. But the ultimate policy deliberation around those comes through the budget hearing process.
What?
Through the budget hearing, the budget hearing process. Yeah. So, right. that will start up the third week in May.
Thank you.
Again, this is just a goal-setting session. And my thought for a goal is that at a certain point, when we go through the deliberation of whatever that is, that whatever the final result is, as a united council, we're able to present our need to our citizens. And if that is something that we need to put in November, we do so as the United Council, and this is what we're doing, and this is the reasons why. And there'll be a lot of good, common, civil deliberation getting to that point. Not sure what that looks like yet until we have that conversation. My overriding goal would be to have us as a council be united, whatever that message is when we've decided. Knowing there's a lot that's going to need to get into that before we get to that point.
So are you asking for having a unified tax message in November?
I'm asking for us to have a unified message when we decide what we're doing in November, whatever it is, even if it's a no-go. Mm-hmm. I just want us to be together on whatever that is, and have the good conversation to go to that point, and be engaged and working together for the best of Clayton. And I'm not sure what it looks like yet, because we got a lot of things to look at. I'm up for additional conversation on this. Jeff? Push your button, so. Is that a goal we could agree on, or are we still part in that? That's my question.
I think it'd be premature until you see what the actual thing is. I mean, it's hard to say that you're all going to be unified if you don't know what you're going to be unified for. So I would reserve judgment until I actually see it.
Okay, what would you think would be something along this measure that we can actually put as a goal for this? I'm open to hearing what your thoughts are. I mean, again, a lot of admiration for how you stood out and you took charge in July of last year. So what would be a goal that would make sense along this line?
I'd have to give some thought to that. It'd probably be something along the lines of sustainable, structural, something that's sustainable, where we have balanced budgets. I mean, I think that covers a lot.
So I concur that a balanced budget is a goal for every year. And Raina said she's going to present a balanced budget, but in light of the apparent need as been presented to us from the 10-year forecast, what can we do as a goal for our citizens in presenting this forward?
I mean, that's what I would say. I think, asking for a unified position without that position being clearly stated is premature. I don't think that we're a monolithic body. So in that case, I don't think it would be appropriate to say, we're all going to agree all the time. And so for this, I would reserve judgment.
And I absolutely concur that we're not all going to agree all the time, but I agree to listen and to hear what all the solutions might be, and if the right solution makes sense, I mean, I'm going to stand behind it. I don't know what it is yet.
As will I.
Yeah, if the right solution presents itself, you would agree to stand behind it?
Of course, that's what reserving judgment means. But you can't agree to something that you don't know.
Again,
I think that would be silly.
I think he was asking for the commitment for us all to work together to try to get to a unified message, depending on what the consultant comes back and says. And you're right, you can't say what it's going to be one way or the other, but he's just asking for us to work together as a cohesive unit to try to get to that point. He's asking for that commitment.
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay, but we don't do it all the time, and I think he's hoping that that's what we can do after we leave these walls at 6 o'clock.
I always try to work together.
Okay.
Jim, do you have any thoughts?
I expressed my thoughts already.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Well, maybe we need to amend that goal then in some way.
Okay.
maybe we need to say we'll reserve the judgment until we get the results from the consultant. However, that we would continue to keep this revenue as a top goal for us. If it's not a tax measure, what is it?
Raina, you have a thought on the amendment?
I do. I can't figure out how to raise my hand in an in-person meeting. It's very unusual. Like, where's my little button? The one thing that I did hear that might be part of a slightly reformulated goal is that structurally sustainable budget is a high-level goal, as is, sort of working together toward unified messaging. And so the broader piece is, we are testing whether there's the appetite for an actual tax measure that would help us get to a structurally sustainable budget. But certainly the goal of having a structurally sustainable budget is one that potentially could be part of a reformulated goal, and doesn't inherently rely on the specific outcome of any of the survey research, because it's a good idea no matter what.
Well, I could get behind that.
I will. So what does that sound like right now in the way you penned it?
I would say, to pursue a structurally sustainable budget.
Okay.
Period. Yeah, I was trying to decide, you could add a million things like by, pursuing revenue options, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, as a high-level goal, that, is there agreement that we should pursue a structurally sustainable budget, which may sort of be obvious, but it doesn't hurt to have a statement nonetheless that it is, of the highest priority for the council, right? It could just sit underneath, in the iceberg graphic. It could sit under the water, and that doesn't elevate it to any level. We've already started to elevate it to above the water line by saying, we want to potentially consider a tax measure, et cetera, et cetera. So those are objectives that could occur under that priority area or that goal.
Well, that is definitely in the iceberg. I'm okay with that.
Because that necessarily precludes, deficit spending or using reserves to plug holes. That's the idea, and I think that's the message that we talked about earlier. Is that that's not a sustainable way to approach problem solving. Sometimes I know some other municipalities have done that in the past on a short-term basis because reasons, but and that is at times viable for a very, very short time, but not in the long term, or even in the midterm, I would say.
I concur.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're at least on the same page there. Yeah.
So that's a goal. I think we have some other structural issues we need to look at as well, relative to budget, that we are just dancing and nibbling around the edges relative to city staffing. We have some significant challenges about who we are as a city relative to how we pay our employees and how that pay is perceived as far as value. And that goes straight to the bottom line of how we're able to pay for those services in the first place, which results in their feeling the way they do and causing the turnover. These conversations about valuing staff and having dedicated staff who want to be here long term. I've been told by a prior mayor that that's the way it's always been. Well, I think it affects the quality of life in Clayton because that's the way it's always been as well. And it's just something to consider and a conversation to be had. It's not something we need to have here, but it may be a goal to have that conversation relative to the vision statement, and refine how we see our staff. In these times where our staff is so highly sought after, and it's so hard to replace staff without paying an arm and a leg for a recruiter or bonuses, it's very difficult. And so the best way to prevent that is to appreciate and pay the staff that you have so you don't have the turnover in the first place. So these are conversations we just haven't had as a council. And I don't think that private councils have, that I'm aware of. Jim, maybe I could be wrong. You might know different council member ideas. But I don't know that those conversations have existed. And this is an important part of evaluating who we are as a city and what we value. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know how we could refine that into a goal, but I think it's a conversation we need to have.
How many goals are you targeting? Because you said you wanted a small number.
I do want a small number. My preferred number would be 3, certainly no more than 5. But 3 to 4 is realistically all we can focus on effectively with everything else.
Goals, total goals.
Good to have parameters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not prepared as a council to kick the can. We keep kicking the can. We keep saying that somebody told you that that's the way it's always been. That's really not good enough because that's not the way it can continue. And sooner or later, a council is going to have to run up and do make the hard choice. I'm prepared to make those hard choices, even in an election year. It's a difficult conversation that we have to have. But I'm just not prepared to kick the can down the road any further. And let our citizens really understand what it is that we're up against. Because we can't sustain it this way.
Were you going to go, Jeff? Your mic was, okay.
Just leave it on, it's fine.
Okay. I'll jump in here then because to me this, I said it the other night, this is not difficult to me at all. I look around at the staff and I know that they're all working hard every day, and I can't tell you guys enough. I say it all the time, but I appreciate all the stuff that you guys are doing, but appreciation doesn't pay bills. So this is a problem that has to be fixed and should have been fixed a long time ago. So I don't want to wait to have the conversation. I'd like to have it tonight because I think it should be one of our goals. It's in our guidelines. I know that's coming up later in the agenda, but this is something that we need to talk about now. I've highlighted, as you can see in green, a lot of things within this document, but the pieces that I'll touch on now, since we're talking about it, have to speak about efficiencies within the department, within City Hall. And it's the very first one reads, the council takes courageous action when necessary to keep Clayton on the cutting edge of well-run, well-managed, innovative cities. I don't think we're doing that. Not because staff is incapable, but they don't have the tools to be able to do it, which is what they're asking for. That was what we talked about the other night. Number 9 reads, technology is used to create efficiencies. They're pounding the table now, saying this is the stuff that we need in-house. We really do need to get to the point where, to CW's point, we're not kicking the can down the road. And I would like to hear from staff, besides technology, besides tools, what other things is it that you need from us as a council? And this is getting to the question that I asked when I became vice mayor, which was, in my place of business, we do 360 reviews, which means your manager doesn't just get to review you're reviewing peers, you're doing all of that. And I would like to know, as a council, what do you need from us? And any of you are free to speak. And when I asked the questioner, made the statement earlier about, is the weekly report that you're giving to us, Is that time consuming? Is it taking you away from what you could be doing so that you are not getting complaints from residents because something wasn't done around town or you didn't respond to them in a timely manner, et cetera? Can you give examples of any time during your work week where you feel your time is not valued because you're doing busy work that doesn't need to be done, because you feel like that's being imposed upon you by this body? And you can say there isn't any, and that's great, and then I can move on.
Oh, it works. Okay, I think it does. Yeah, your assistant to the city manager, Laura Hoffmeister here. The council weekly is not a big deal. It takes 15 minutes. I know the police department keeps track of those statistics because that's important for you as council members, I think, to understand what the calls for service have been about. Any one of us throughout the day, we get calls from your constituents, from our community, and those are everything from Jim just got one today. 2 trees are dead. Can you come over? We're concerned they're going to fall on the house. They're in our open space, and he's on it. So those types of day in and day out things, we have to be responsive to the community. You don't have a general information department of staff to answer those, so they're all directed to the appropriate department. But we all have our other workload that we do too. But it's nothing from the council that's adding to our workload.
Perfect.
It's just the day in and day out operations of a community that's grown in size over the years. That means more phone calls proportionately to the number of constituents that are in your community. 5% of 8,000 people and 5% of 10,000 people's a jump. And
Sure.
you have the same staffing levels that you've had historically in the community, responding to a larger number of constituent calls, inquiries, issues that they see in the community that we need to be responsive to. So the workload has just been more of a community increase. Oh, that one's not working. Okay. Anyway, so just wanted to let you know it's not council driven. I think the council works well. All of you represent the community as a whole, but each one of you has maybe different constituents or different people that look to you, and you bring your concerns directly to the city manager, who then prioritizes based upon what she knows we're working on and how to address your needs, and she knows our workload and what we can adjust. So it's not the council, it's just the overall growth in the community. And I'll put in a plug for unfunded mandates, which isn't a part of the general fund, but we do have the stormwater fund. We do have stuff with recycling and solid waste coming up as well that will be additional workloads that the staff has to undertake. And we also don't have revenue streams to address those state unfunded mandates as we go forward in the future, and see more of that also from our friends in Sacramento. But that's a challenge as well. It doesn't necessarily always drive into the general fund numbers, but there are stuff that does happen external to that we'll be seeing in the next couple of years and expanding thereon into the future. That's another driver.
Thank you.
Laura, that was awesome. Thank you. I think the takeaway from that is that we've increased 20%, but our staff hasn't. That is something we need to really acknowledge by the fact that Clayton is continuing to grow and our staff size isn't. Chief Warren, if you don't mind, I would like you to take the mic again, if you can give it to her. And the reason why I'd like you to do so is because at the beginning, when you stated the reasons you were leaving, you weren't on mic, and I really wanted to be heard by all. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm out of admiration and appreciation for you and what you've done and the reasons you're leaving and why it was difficult. It's important to hear that because that goes straight to our vision of how we are as a city. And I'd like to hear it again, please.
It's one button. I feel like she's done the button.
Growing pains.
Check the battery.
How about now? Okay. I think to recap what I was saying earlier about why I, am leaving. Clayton is a great city and, filled with a lot of people that really care about the community. And I think the expectations are very high, and the funding is very low. And for me, I always seek opportunities where I can have professional growth. And I feel like I've made a lot of forward progress. We've gone from a department of, very young officers that really were just taking police reports and filing them away to now doing really good investigations and putting people in jail that need to go to jail. I've updated, equipment and brought in some new technologies, but it's really capped out. We really can't make any more forward progress without more money for more staff and more money for new technologies. And, I feel like I'm at a plateau right now. There's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong. I do love it here. I love the support you guys give me and the support the community gives me. But as far as my own professional development, there's just not a whole lot left for me, given the constraints of staffing and budget. And, kind of going back to what Laura was talking about with the growth of the community and the demands, we are a very full-service police department, and we focus a lot on quality of life issues. And so, people call the police because there's a rattlesnake in their yard. And, we're at your house within 10 minutes. That doesn't happen in other communities because, the staff focuses on crime. We have the luxury to really help residents with a lot of quality of life issues. And our staffing barely covers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to put 2 officers on the street. And we do have new mandates with training. So when you take into account the time off that officers are entitled to and should use, their vacation, mandated training, oftentimes vacancies, my officers are having to work, 30, 40, 50 hours a month overtime, and that affects their own quality of life. Most of my officers have families at home. And so, while they love coming to work, burnout is high. And so, we try to serve the community the best we can, but when you have limited resources and limited staff and high demands, not being able to go home and see your family because you're having to cover other people's shifts because they have to go to mandated training or they need to take vacation, it becomes difficult.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Catherine, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yes. Hello. I was also going to answer your question, Vice Mayor Tillman. So when I'm thinking about necessary versus busy work, since I've started here, I don't think we have not done any busy work. Everything's necessary. And like, for instance, this week, our accounting technician is out, so the only other person to do any of the work that she's doing is myself. So, I'm picking up payroll and doing all those things, and that's not just myself. There's that's just one example of, having such a small staff and the amount of work that it's required to get things done. I also wanted to talk about the difference between going off of regulatory requirements. We also have a lot of regulatory requirements in finance and in engineering and in, there are so many different reporting requirements that don't differ when you look at a large city versus a small city. So a large city that has, multiple shopping centers and multiple revenue sources still has the same reporting requirements as a small city, and they may have 12 staff or 10 staff in their finance department, or even 4 staff if it's a small city, or in their police department or in their public works department. So I'm just trying to help you guys understand that I think for the most part all of our work is necessary work just to get the minimum level of things done and just to allow things to function. within a reasonable time frame. I do think that, getting things digitized will help us do our job. So investing in being able to have things digitized, because things will be, run a little bit smoother that way. I know that's a huge project and a huge undertaking, because there are many, many years of records that need to be digitized. So, and streamlining things with technology, which is great that you guys have supported the ClearGov. I think that's really going to help everyone. I think it's going to help the community work together, and you guys understand where our budget gaps are in the actual budget, so that you'll see where we have to cut if we have to cut things. So that's it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Catherine.
And I want to just add on why I mentioned what I did is because I, same as you, have been getting a lot of phone calls from residents, and I had a long conversation with one today, and they shared their view of wanting to make sure that that staff was working on high quality work versus low quality work, meaning mundane things and tasks they can get rid of, et cetera. So that's why I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to actually voice you're doing quality work now, and it's everything that's critical to actually keeping the city running. And I wanted that to be on record that you guys are sharing that with the community for whoever's listening in. So thank you all.
This is a tough discussion. I mean, because we're hearing need, and I am hearing need from our staff. I'm also hearing pushback from our citizens relative to paying for the staff's needs. And these are all part of the larger conversation about what we are and who we're going to be in the future as a premier small city like we like to call ourselves. It's a longer and deeper conversation, and it requires a lot of attention and a lot of honesty and a lot of depth. We can't give you what we want to give you based on our current revenue stream. How's that for a straight answer? You deserve kudos for what you're doing, but you also deserve more than just kudos. You deserve to be compensated for that, but we don't have that in our revenue stream. That's just a reality. And that needs to be addressed. And that needs to be addressed by this council or the next. It needs to be addressed. If we want to be a premier city in the 21st century, we got to be that city and step up to treat our staff so they can serve our city in that manner and give them the technology and the training necessary to serve our city in that manner. And that's something that can't be addressed fully tonight, but I want to acknowledge it right here that this is a conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be presented to our citizens in a way that they understand it, and so they understand the repercussions if we don't step up to that. I don't know how much that is yet, or what it specifically looks like, but I want to state that as a goal, we need to start having that conversation and what that looks like. And it's not, while it is specifically related to a revenue measure, it's more a vision question of how we value our staff and what we need to do to help get us up to where we need to be so we don't become Concord East because we can't afford our staff because they're all gone.
So, Mayor and Council, I would ask, as we're continuing along through this time frame, we've talked about pursue a structurally sustainable budget as a goal. And are there any other specific goals that we would like to add at this point, or are we at a wrap on this item? Just trying to gauge this sense, given our timing. I just want to, if we're ready to move on, we're ready to move on. If not,
I'm not sure. I don't want to make this conversation a goal about vision of us in the future. I mean, it's not. If the answer comes back no, that we can't pass or put something on the budget or on a ballot in November, it doesn't change the fact that we need to have this conversation. That's what I'm saying. Is that if for some reason we come up with we cannot put something that's sustainable and will pass, and even if we do and it doesn't pass, it doesn't change the fact that we need to have this conversation. So this conversation needs to be happen, whether it's amongst ourselves or facilitated in some way. We need to have this conversation.
So I think the question is, do you want to translate that into a goal?
Yeah, I would like to have a goal of talking about what it takes to get our city staff available and up to speed at the 21st with both value and technology.
Sold.
So I'm going to say that again so that Mala can type, because she's typing faster than I'm writing. Thank you, City Attorney. What it will take to support staff in terms of compensation and tools.
Technology tools to bring us up to the 21st century.
To bring us up to the 21st century.
Do they feel valued and we keep them? I mean, that's
the discussion. Let's do it.
Okay. Since she's typing and I'm talking, it works better if I try not to write and talk at the same time. So I'm hearing a second goal around that. Ultimately, these will come back for full adoption. So if there's some tweaking we need to do to the language, we can do that at that point. Is there any... Do you want to add anything? I'm okay with 2 goals. Trust me, I have plenty. Those are big, audacious goals. Are there other goals?
I have one more. I want to get consensus among the 5 of us that we feel that it's important to pass or to present a housing element to HCD that is compliant.
Sold. Let's do it.
Yes.
I just want that as a goal, all 5 of us want to pass a compliant housing element.
Let's follow the law.
Yes.
What the heck? What? I don't understand.
A compliant housing element.
Speak English, please.
We have a housing element that's due to HCD that they will review. In order to maintain funding, we need to make sure it's compliant and it passes their inspection. In order to get there, we have to have quite a bit of dialogue and conversation to get to that point. I just want to agree that as a goal, all 5 of us want to have a compliant housing element.
I want to make sure that we thrive as a city and we can grow. How we get there, we haven't had that dialogue. We need to have that dialogue.
So, Jim, a housing element is due every 8 years. It's mandated by law. In order to do that, we got to go through the process again. There is going to be a process, and there's going to be lots of discussions to get there. But I want, as a goal, as a city council, all of us, 5 of us, to agree that that is something that we will submit to the state as much as we can, a housing element that will be reviewed and compliant with the state. And state that as a goal for all 5 of us. That's what we want.
I think we've always had a goal to comply with the law.
I just want to make sure that we're all on board with that goal, because then we can make the process happen. But I want to hear it from that's a goal of ours.
Yes.
Then in your goal, but I'm just wondering, is that a goal of yours, Jim?
Yeah.
Awesome. That's my 3rd goal. I don't have any more right now.
Anything else on this item? Okay, you took public comment earlier on this item, so with that, I believe we can close this item, and we can move on to council guidelines and procedures. I have a very brief PowerPoint on this topic. This is something that, with the exception of a...
Point of information, I am turning into a pumpkin in 15 minutes, so...
You're turning into a pumpkin at 5:45.
5:50-ish, yeah.
5:50, okay. Well, if I can get my computer to work, which I can't at the moment. So that's a very nice cover slide. You have the other slides in your packet. I have the slides in my packet. See that pounding on the computer? It didn't make any difference. So I'm just going to go off my packet. This is why we have old school technology as well. With the exception of 2019, when a very minor change was made to these council guidelines, they really haven't been changed in any substantial way since 2007, and many of those pieces are, in fact, somewhat older than that. So from a process standpoint, there have been a couple of requests for discussion of these over time. And as part of that, one, I wanted to bring that forward to the council. And two, there is one particular thing that I would ask that we clarify and formalize in the guidelines, and that is how something gets on a future council agenda. Right now, it gets brought up at the end of the meeting. There's sort of a general yeah, okay, but there's no clear consensus to have that put on a future council meeting. And so consistent with what Orinda does, I think Lafayette is doing this now, and other jurisdictions, in the moment, say a council member requests, I would like to have X put on the agenda. That is essentially a motion to put that on a future agenda. If that motion gets a second and an affirmative vote by 3 or more council members, then it gets put on either for a date specific if that was a piece of the request, or at basically the earliest point that we can bring it forward with whatever the work is that's needed. What this does, and no, so I'm channeling my city attorney who's sitting right here, with no substantive discussion on the subject, it's really just a more transparent litmus test that it's really something that the majority of the council wants to be brought back. Sometimes they don't require a lot of work, but typically even to bring it back, for a preliminary discussion does require some staff work. And so again, in this trying to be transparent, trying to be efficient, really to get this clarity, that is a request I would make that we incorporate that additional clarity into the guidelines. With that, it is to the council for discussion of that or any other potential changes you would like to consider for the guidelines. And I don't know if we want to take public comment now or after. If the council has questions for me about my presentation or my recommendation, perhaps you could ask them now. Then we could take public comment. Then you could have discussion.
Yes, I have one. I don't want to limit any of the 5 of us to not have an item brought forward. Now, with that person sitting to your right, you're going to say, we're going to ask for an agenda item in the future. If it's not on the agenda tonight, how can we discuss it?
I'll start, and then the city attorney can chime in. There is discussion about whether or not it should come back, but there's no discussion of the substance. You want to discuss the color we're going to paint City Hall. You say, I want an item to come back on the color of City Hall. No conversation on the color of City Hall, but conversation, if it's needed, on whether or not that should come back on a future council agenda. That's the distinction between the subject matter of the request and the request itself.
Is this going to finalize something? I mean, I don't know how many to-dos you have on your follow-up for future item. Yeah, I know it's growing. Where are they? Is this going to help address that? Because I've lost track of how many we've brought forward and have not seen it come onto agenda.
It provides clarity. It does help prioritize those. There are some that I think have come up in the past as specific requests where I don't know that there was council majority interest in them, and some of those have languished. But they've languished without transparency, and I think it's a better practice for us to have that transparency in terms of general agreement or not on those requests to come forward, rather than as sort of a not clear process.
Well, it strikes me that each of us are an individually elected body, or representative of a number of people out there. I will say this: those items that come that I bring up, I'm bringing up because somebody out there in Clayton land wanted to hear discussion on it, and I'm assuming that the rest of these individuals are also receiving the same kind of a request from their people that talk to them. What I don't want it to do, and this is my opinion, is cut this thing off so it never gets to the agenda.
No, I think that's fair. I think that probably happens in other cities too. Councilmember Diaz, is if it's a 3-2 vote, then nothing ever comes to the council. So is there a way that we can adopt what you presented, but also just put parameters around? Because I don't want to shut anybody out from being able to present something, but maybe we prioritize it kind of in that moment, not have a full-on discussion. But yes, we'd like to see that within the next 2 meetings, or we would like to see that within the next 4 meetings. Is that possible?
Timing can absolutely be part of that process.
Okay.
In terms of the desire to have it potentially brought back.
Okay. Yeah, I think that kind of would alleviate anyone's wishes or agenda item not coming forward or being left on the list for 12 months, as an example. Yeah.
Wait, are we on questions?
Yes, we are on questions.
I'll wait.
I'm done.
If there are no other questions, we can ask the clerk understudy to determine if there are hands raised.
Dana, we'll open public comment. Is there any hands raised, Dana, for this?
We do have one hand raised.
Awesome.
Ryan, I will momentarily promote you to panelist. When prompted, please unmute your microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to speak once you're invited by the mayor.
Hello, everyone.
Greetings,
Can you
Ryan.
hear me? Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ryan, and we're talking about this specific item, which is future agenda items. We're not talking about what has been spoken about before that section was closed.
So my hand was raised for my hand was raised for an earlier topic. So just sorry about that, everyone. I'll go away.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Dana, are there other hands raised on this item?
Mayor Cloven, there are no other hands raised on this item.
Thank you, Dana. We'll bring it back for discussion.
So, may I?
Yes, please, Jeff.
I'm pretty solidly opposed to your proposal. No offense to you, but I think it's just generally a bad idea because what it allows is, in the past, historically, the practice, not a rule, but the practice was always anytime a council member brings up an idea for future, not an idea, sorry, an item for future agendas, it would always come back to the agenda, like as a rule. It may not come back the next time, but it would come back. There would be a running list. We'd all know what the list was, and then it would be prioritized, and that's fine, based on staff. A lot of times, the rule, the guideline was no staff work is essentially done until it's directed by a majority of the council, but putting something on the agenda to say, hey, let's talk about something takes virtually no time. And then action items from that may stem depending on what the body thinks as a whole. By doing this, we're not allowed to talk about issues outside of these meetings. And so without any substantive discussion, you're not able to even engage in the act of persuasion or to have the argument or have the discussion around any item. So, you would have, a majority that says the minority can never bring items up. I think that's bad. And so even if even outlandish ideas, we're here to represent the whole of the people. And even if there's outlandish ideas, I think that's fine. Those are easily dismissed. But we should have the ability and avenue to bring those up, and without bringing them as an agenda item, we will never have that discussion. Like, it's just not allowed. So I'd be pretty wholly opposed to a change of this nature.
Am I reading it wrong, though? I thought that it was... Okay, it does say it has to be a majority vote. Okay. I still think I want to tweak it. So I like the general idea of it, and I do agree with both of them that I don't want to not have anything come before an agenda item. I'm just opposed to the timing, right? And whether or not that has to be agreed upon at that moment. And trying to have a conversation at that moment on when it's going to come forward. So I don't know that it has to be seconded and approved. My concern is when it's going to come back.
Yeah, the timing is not even something that I don't think it's really reasonable to say at the time of request, this is the timing, because it's hard to sequence in the level of effort necessary for whatever particular item it happens to be. It's really just, let's add it to the list, and it will come back eventually when it is prioritized, and it's not going to be like set aside for no reason. I mean, I think if you have a clear list of what's there and that's visible, then it's easy to see that something's not being set aside. It's going in either some order or some level of importance, that there's a timing aspect to it. Like if you want to do something that's happening we're in March. If you want to do something that's happening in April, it doesn't make sense to have that agenda item come up in May. So that doesn't make sense. But typically when it's something that would either take a lot of staff time or whatnot, it's really just put it on the agenda so we're actually allowed to talk about it, right? And then we can decide if that's something we want to task the staff to do based on whatever. And that's just our time. It's not their time. So I think the current system is fine. You could formalize it by saying you're going to maintain an ongoing list. That's easy. But other than that, I don't really think it's a necessary change.
My thoughts are, I would be challenged if I were to bring something to the council. And I did ask for an environmental action plan a while ago that has never come back. And if one person agreed with me and 3 people didn't, I would have a challenge with that. So I hear what you're saying, both of you. Just by the very fact that I asked for it and you shut it down without any discussion, that would be a challenge. So thank you. I appreciate it. I do think it would be appropriate, though, if I wanted to bring that up, that it would be nice to have somebody else say, yeah, I'd like to hear that, but not necessarily, at least have one other, not a majority, just one other say, yeah, I'd like to hear that as well. I think that'd be a good thing, but not have a vote whether or not bring it back. Just have a second on that item.
I mean, procedurally, that's not actionable.
That's not a thing. But I hear what I'm saying. I hear your point. I'd hate to have something shut down early without the ability to have a conversation. So I appreciate.
Because essentially, if you don't bring it up, you're not evaluating on the merits. You're evaluating it based on, I don't know what. It's like not taking a case, basically. But until you actually have a discussion, then you're actually evaluating the merits. So I think you want to get to the merits, and you can do that pretty quickly.
Sounds like this item needs some additional discussion.
Yeah, and then to Jim's point, a lot of the things that we bring up are brought up by citizens to us to bring forward. It may not set well with somebody else on the council, but that is true, that we are representing the whole of the city, and people do want to be heard. So, I think this is inherently an interesting idea, but probably flawed. So we're spending a lot of time on it, I know, but I think in general we agree that we need to be heard in one way or another. It's the question on timing is when these things come back. To Mayor Cloven's point, I don't know when you brought that up, but it's been some time. So I don't know what the priority list is and how that's going to work going forward. Maybe we need to prioritize in some way these various requests.
I do think some process, at a minimum, I could think of. I mean, I came into this job and there were items from 2019. So, and I came in December of 2020. So, there's some staleness to some of the requests. And so, at a minimum, at an annual goal-setting session, I think we should review any outstanding requests so that, that's
I like
that's
that.
a low bar.
That'd be good.
I think there could be a higher bar. I will work on developing one that I don't have in the moment. But at a minimum, I do think a regular, annual or more process for having the council review the council requests.
You know what you could do?
What could I do?
You could do like a quarterly aggregation of all requests and have it as an agenda item to prioritize them.
I could do that too. So,
or semi-annually.
Something like that. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the council rules and procedures. I just wanted to clarify it. This is a great conversation. Don't want to spend any more of your time on it. I will work on something else. Talk amongst yourselves.
I think we're not bringing this to a vote tonight, it sounds like. So
Yeah, I think we're good on that.
I think we're good on this item.
Yeah. But the other thing, I know he's going to turn into a pumpkin. So this thing is really outdated, and I know that we're limited on time. What's the most efficient way to get all the edits that I have that I would like to make to this? But they're just simple things.
How about if you have edits, I would recommend that you send them to Raina, and then she'll put it on the agenda, and then
Perfect.
we can talk through it.
Let's do that. Yeah.
And theoretically, you could just do it through consent.
Perfect. Oh, you have the broken one.
You need the red light.
We're going to share. This is how we used to do
we need to
it.
vote?
Well, now your light's red.
I just wanted to clarify, I did not want every council member to send their comments to Raina and create a Brown Act violation.
No.
So if it sounds like it just may be the vice mayor who has comments, then that can be given, and then that can be brought back at a future council meeting.
Okay, I will do that. That's more efficient.
And whenever this next quarterly-ish thing comes back, if there are further comments on the guidelines, because I'll bring the guidelines and the items, and then there can be further conversation. Sounds like with that, we're going to roll through to the next item.
That is correct, which is the next meeting.
I do got to run, but I will say I'm open to whatever you want to do on the next meeting.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you want to come here, I'll come here. If you want to do it there, I'll go there.
Okay. Mayor and City Council, the last item on the agenda is just a check-in on our meeting for April 5th. We have been moving forward toward having in-person meetings starting April 5th. That would be in-person for both council staff and the public. The county health officer is still recommending fully virtual meetings. That is their health recommendation, and they are recommending for public meetings that there be physical distancing of 3 to 6 feet between folks. If we set up this chamber for public access in the room with appropriate physical distancing, we can accommodate about 12 members of the public. We're really quite limited if we spread chairs out. So before we move forward with that or determine what sort of hybrid meeting potentially we want to have, I did want to check in with the council and confirm how you would like to handle the April 5th meeting.
So I'm aware that we are generally 2 to 3 weeks behind Europe in how COVID cases go, and they're getting hit pretty hard right now with COVID. And if we're 2 to 3 weeks behind, we're getting close to that level with our next meeting. And so I want to be clearly on the record that I want in-face face-to-face meetings. There are several members out there in the community who have been very clear that they will not attend meetings virtually. They want to be in person. I've talked to them, and I want them to be present, and I want to be able to look them in the eye when they have comments towards me. For those people who want to attend, I want them here.
Mayor Cloven, if I might, I think if we want to do questions now and then go to public comment and
Sure.
then go back to
Thank you.
deliberation.
I appreciate it. Can we, is 12 the max we can put in here?
Well, it depends on whether people come in pods. If they come in pods with their friends, they can sit more closely together. But I mean, 12 to 15 is really going to be as much as we probably want to put in this room, given its size. If we want to keep the council members spread apart, that also has an impact.
What system would we put in place to monitor which 12 or 15 would get in here first, if there were more than 12 or 15 that wanted to be here?
So, one mechanism would be to say that we do it like today's meeting, which is to say, and I know that doesn't address the people who want to physically be here to participate in person, but that's one mechanism. A second mechanism is we can do first come, first serve. We'd have to figure out a way to have, we'd have to have a hybrid method, which we would, because there has to be another way for everybody to be able to participate. We're not well set up here for any kind of overflow, which would be the other, if we could, project to a television screen in the lobby of the library. We are not set up for that. That would be a little bit to get set up. So, the mechanism might be to maintain virtual for the public until the county restrictions are really fully rescinded.
Question: does the county restriction only apply to public meetings? I was in a meeting here 2 weeks ago. There were 50 people in the room. Was that not a public meeting? And it wasn't the city of Clayton that put it on.
It was not a public meeting.
So they could have 50, 100 people in here.
That's correct. We're talking about meetings held by a public entity.
Any other questions from the council? If not, I could open this up for public comment. And if there's anybody in the public who wants to speak to this item about our next meeting, hybrid meetings versus having public versus Zoom, you have now 3 minutes to speak. Dana, do we have any hands?
Mayor Cloven, we do not have hands raised on this item.
Thank you. With that, this public comment is closed on this particular item. We bring it back for discussion. Council members, what are your thoughts for their next meeting and how we want to proceed with this?
I will be on spring break with my family, which is why I brought this up a couple weeks ago. And given it's our last family spring break to take before my senior leaves town, I would need to be virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, and I brought my mask today. I'm boosted and vaccinated, but given your daughter's situation, given the fact that Holly was boosted just before having this again, and the situation that you just mentioned with regard to Europe and travel and all of that, I think we're premature in trying to fit everybody back in here. I think that it's going to come a time when we're able to get back here. But if this setup is the way we're going to go, it feels a bit uncomfortable to me.
Do you not go to the market anymore?
I do, and
there are
I still,
hundreds of people in the market.
I still wear my mask.
And maybe 40% are wearing masks.
But I wear mine. And, I have done my darndest to not get this disease, and I would like to continue that. However, if there's a virtual component and we're allowed to stay virtual in some way, if you want to have, if Vice Mayor Tillman can be virtual and we can have some virtual aspect to that, then I'm fine with that. As long as we're under the auspices of the county health director, that's what we've always done during this time. I don't have a problem staying there. Once we can get back to actually having the public in person, and we can all have a system where people can actually come in here without being shooed away after 12 or 15, then I'm fine with that too.
So let me understand the question, or let me understand. If we go back to a combination of in-person and what have you, you're only going to be able to allow 12 people here, 14 people?
Correct.
That would be consistent with the county health officer's guidance.
Well, I'm in favor of getting them back in here. They want to come back in here. I've heard from so many people that say, you know, they're tired of talking, can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. You know, that kind of stuff. I think we ought to try to get back to in-person as best we can. That's just me talking. Thank you.
So I'm going to make the statement, if you're already attending virtually on April 19th, April 5th, and we've got some time to figure out whether this is going to be the case. I would like to shoot for April 19th when you're back, being the first in-person meeting then, because first of all, I want you there for the April 5th meeting, given our agenda, and I still want to have in-person meetings. So putting it back one meeting from April 5th to April 19th when you're in person, we'll get a chance to see what's happening relative to county regulations, and let's shoot for that date.
So can I clarify, is April 5th a fully virtual meeting with all of us participating virtually, or is everybody who can of staff and council who can be here in person to be here in person with the allowance for Vice Mayor Tillman to participate virtually under the auspices of AB 361, which we would need to be continuing those resolutions for any of the hybrid participation as well?
I'd also like to stay virtual for that myself.
So with both council members, Councilmember Wolf and Vice Mayor Tillman desiring to be virtual, let's make the April 5th meeting completely virtual.
How about a motion and a second and some voting?
I'm just making I am moving that the April 5th meeting be completely virtual, with our goal being April 19th as being back in person with public.
Which one will be in person?
April 19th.
And then we got to fix the system. I've been trying to figure out who's online here. When I'm at home on my iPad, I can see who's all waiting. Can't do that. I fuss with it, and Laura even tried it. We got to fix that system. I don't know what to do to get so I can see who's on waiting in the line there.
We're not online. We're not online. That's why you can't see it.
I want to get online. Tell me how to do it.
Well, you stay home and you be virtual.
I'll talk to that guy. He seems to be running around here figuring everything out. Thank you.
CW made a second.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I lost track in the commentary. So, Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Councilmember Diaz?
No.
Councilmember 1 is absent. Councilmember Wolf?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tillman?
Yes.
Mayor Cloven?
Yes. Motion carries 3-1. Is that the item?
We are adjourning.
We are adjourning officially. Thank you all for participating. Much appreciated. We'll see you back virtually on April 5th.
Thank you.